Well, good morning or good evening. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For this week's video, I want to make another simple freight car load. It's been a while since I've done any of those on my channel, and I wanted to get back into it again. This particular project was inspired by a view I saw briefly in a YouTube video. I don't remember who the author was, but it briefly showed in the middle distance a gondola full of aluminum scrap. Now, I paused the video and it didn't really bear close examination. It turned out it was just a few soda can ring pulls thrown into the gondola. But it did give me an idea, and I wondered if I could turn it into a reasonably realistic load. So let's just head over to my workbench and do some experimentation. Don't go away. Here we have a cheap HO scale gondola. I think this is an old Athens blue box variation. It doesn't even have proper couplers on it yet, but it really doesn't matter what you use. The process is going to be exactly the same regardless. Now here I have a whole load of ring pulls from aluminum soda cans, and if we fill the gondola with the ring pulls, it really doesn't look like much. There really isn't any disguising what that is. But I'm thinking that if I were to chop them all up into random unidentifiable pieces, we could have the makings of a reasonable scrap load. So let's experiment and see if it's going to work. Now, to chop them up, I'm using an old pair of rail nippers. I figure that since the ring pull is made entirely out of aluminum, that is softer than the rail that they're designed to cut, so it should be okay. Even so, I'm not going to risk my expensive Zuron cutters. I'm going to use an old pair. And already these pieces have started flying off, so let's use something to restrain them in. This is probably going to be the longest part of the job. Well, I've been chopping out ring pulls now for the best part of an hour, and this is what I have. I knew the volume would shrink dramatically when I started chopping them up, but I didn't realise just how much. Already I have chopped up about 3 times as many ring pulls as I had in the car to start with. I didn't count them, but I'm guessing about 100 of them. I don't even know if I have enough to cover the bottom. Oh yes, more than enough. So put them back in here for now. I'm not going to fill the whole car with them. I'm going to start with making a base out of basswood. Now I want a fairly loose fit because I don't want it to jam. And I'm reasonably happy with that. I've got about 1 millimetre of clearance in both directions. And I think I want to jack it up just a little bit. And I'm going to go there. So I'm going to put some blocks underneath it. Now what I'm going to do is glue a nail to that. We cut the head off so it sits properly. Also, I can't do that with my rail nippers, it will ruin them. But the idea is that this is a steel nail and it is magnetic, so it will allow me to lift the load out with a magnet. So I'm just going to super glue this nail to the middle of the load. Now I'm going to let that glue set before I come back and paint it. Well, I've given the glue plenty of time to go completely hard and dry so that I don't ruin the paintbrush. And the next thing I'm going to do is give this a quick coat of black paint. I don't want the wood colour showing through. Well, I've given the black paint time to dry, and I could probably just leave it black, but I'm going to try putting a silver dry brush on it. I don't know if it needs it, but as I may have said earlier, this is an experiment. I've never made one of these before. I'm pretty much just making it up as I go along. It doesn't need to be even. I just want some silver areas and some black areas. And if I end up with big lumps of paint like I have on the end of that now, well, it doesn't really matter. This will pretty much be hidden anyway. I just want to make sure that the colour is reasonable, just in case a few little areas show through. I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is get some masking tape and put it around the edge. Now I'm going to put it on in two thin strips rather than a wide one. Now the purpose of this masking tape is to give me a wall around it that will hold the bits of scrap aluminum. And apparently this magnet is not strong enough to lift it. I do have some stronger ones somewhere. This is just one I borrowed from the refrigerator. Unfortunately, I don't know where my strong magnets are. And now it's just a case of gluing these in place. I don't know quite how I'm going to glue them, but what I want is just enough of them to cover the base. It turns out I might not need as many as I thought I did earlier. And I think that will be fine, if only I can get it to glue down properly. And I think I only used about half of my ring pulls. So what I'm going to do now is just squirt the super glue in here liberally. Hopefully I get some between all the mating surfaces. I'm hoping it should work its way in between all the pieces by capillary action. Maybe a larger tube of super glue would have been in order. But I started buying this stuff for my Fast Trax turnouts. Here it looks like I'm going to go through about 5 tubes. But that's okay, it's like 17 cents a tube. Now I won't know for a few minutes whether this has worked. So I'm going to turn the camera off and I'll check in with you again later. Well, I've already turned it upside down and given it a few taps, and a few pieces fell out, but not very many. So the majority of it is properly stuck in. I don't feel any loose bits, but there is more of the black visible than I wanted, so I'm going to put a little bit more of scrap in. Let's see if that works. It looks a lot better now than it did. And now the last step in the process is to peel off the tape and see what we have. Oh, a lot fell off there. I guess that was stuck to the tape and not to the load. And we definitely need to get this glued back in at this corner, because I've got a big area of wood that's showing through. And everywhere else it seemed to work. I'm going to walk away for a while just to make sure the glue is completely dried before I put it in the car, because I don't want to glue it in. Well, I've given the super glue plenty of time to get completely dry, because as I said, I don't want to risk gluing it in. It fits in there perfectly. There's a little bit of slop, so it comes out easily as well. Although, as I said earlier, my fridge magnet is not strong enough to lift it out. I need to find my stronger ones. But I think it turned out okay. I wasn't sure if I was going to have to jack it up a little bit higher. I could have just put an extra spacer in underneath, but I don't think it needs to be any fuller. I think that looks pretty good the way it is. Yes, I think I can tell that it's made from soda can ring pulls, but then obviously I knew in advance. I still think it looks okay. Well, that's all for this video. If you've watched my previous videos of a few years ago, you will probably remember that I did a completely different type of scrap metal load out of styrene. And of course this load looks nothing like it, but then scrap metal does come in different grades. In fact, as an aside, I remember reading many years ago something along the lines that when scrapping a steam locomotive, the brass out of the wheel and valve gear bearings was worth nearly as much as the rest of the locomotive. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. It just gives an interesting idea how some metals are worth so much more than others when scrapped. So obviously a scrapyard on your model railroad can be in the business of sorting out scrap into different metals to try to get the best return on it. So anyway, I'm just going to sign off here, and I hope to see you again next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.